It's great to welcome to the program today Congressman Robert Garcia, representing California's 42nd Congressional District. Congressman, it's so great to have you on. And, the timing is both fortunate and unfortunate in the sense of we're dealing with a lot of very serious things right now, and it's hard to know where to even start. Maybe to pick one place. Senator Chris Van Hollen was denied a visit with Abrego Garcia. You're requesting to go with other members of Congress. What is it that you think you need to see or want to see there? What do we need to know right now?
Well, I think two things are really important about this moment. The first, which I should not get lost, is the fact that Donald Trump is openly defying a Supreme Court order to bring back Abrego Garcia from El Salvador. The fact that the president is denying that and essentially saying that the Supreme Court is agreeing with his position is a constitutional crisis of the moment. This is an emergency. Look, the president can appoint judges that we may disagree with, justices that we may disagree with strongly, but you have to, as an equal branch of government, abide by the laws of the Supreme Court. So the fact that he is not doing that is really serious as a country and a democracy. The second piece of this is Donald Trump is now sending people that have legal status to be here, which he had, to a foreign prison, which he himself has admitted was a mistake that he went down there. And now he's refusing to bring him back. And so we have a duty to ensure that he is safe, and most importantly, that we bring him home, which is why we've made these requests to the Republican majority.
There is so much speculation about this it's a surreal moment where, sitting in the Oval Office, the president of the United States and the president of El Salvador both said, we don't really have the power, even working together, to move one individual from one of their countries to the other. Very difficult to believe that two presidents wouldn't be able to do that, which has raised some to ask the question, do we even know that Garcia is alive? Is that a concern you share?
Well, I mean, we don't know, obviously, but we're hopeful. The president of El Salvador had made some remarks that he's being held and he's safe, days ago. But it's very concerning. I mean, we need to be able to check in and ensure that he is safe. And at the end of the day, he is owed due process, as are other individuals that are being sent to this prison that have had some type of legal residency here or some type of ability to be here. Those folks shouldn't be sent down there. And on top of that, what we're seeing right now is Donald Trump deporting and essentially, I think, causing great harm to not just them and their families, but deporting students with visas, deporting workers that have work permits. This is not the United States that we know. Nobody wants to have someone that's committed crimes or that's here causing problems in the US. We can all agree on that. But if you are a student and you're on a campus and you're contributing, you're getting deported and not being told why, that's not the United States that we know. And if you are here on a temporary visa or some type of temporary or permanent residency, and then you're being deported, sent to a foreign prison without due process, without a judge actually sentencing you, that is a huge problem.
We talked earlier on my program today, the story of a naturalized American citizen who's been in the country 40 years as a citizen for 10 of those years, who was detained for hours at a Canadian-Vermont border crossing. American citizen, to be clear, naturalized. And I was thinking to myself, at the beginning we were told the focus will be so-called criminal illegals, not a term I use, but I'm using their term. Then it was, well, anybody who's undocumented. Then it was like, well, maybe the visas, maybe we'll start looking at permanent residents. We're now talking about a naturalized citizen. I thought of myself. I have come over that border 30 times growing up as my family would go to Montreal and come back. My sister currently lives in Canada. Am I at risk of the same sort of detention as a naturalized U.S. citizen coming over that very border in Vermont? I mean, is that where you think we are right now?
I think that's where we're headed. I also think that Donald Trump is now openly discussing sending U.S. citizens to foreign prisons, as we saw kind of in that hot mic moment with the president of El Salvador.
Yeah.
So I think we're only 3 months into the Trump presidency. And so I think people need to understand that he's crossing red lines in the sand that have not been crossed before. And we've got to take those very seriously. And it's not, it's not just, this is not a moment where we can just have business as usual. And Congress needs to fight back really, really hard and be aggressive, which is why so many of us have tried to lean in, not just on this issue, but so many others, whether it's, Elon Musk and DOGE, whether it's the illegal, unconstitutional destruction of our federal agencies that Donald Trump is trying to do, or in this case, deporting people here that have legal status. We've got to speak out, protest, and we've got to get down to El Salvador as well. I really commend Senator Van Hollen for going down there. There's a group of House members, as you know, that we're planning on going down there as well.
One of the things that my audience has been saying to me is, what can Congress do in this particular context? I've caught myself over the last week when I start saying the Constitution guarantees or due process guarantees. What does it mean that something is guaranteed if it can be ignored with no real consequences? So I think what many people in my audience want to hear very plainly, and if the answer is you're not sure what we can do, then fair. If there is this dismissal of a legal court order as we just don't want to do that, what does it mean that something is guaranteed by the Constitution? And what can your legislative body do about that?
Well, I think Congress can fight, bring attention, and get reversals on these positions and file lawsuits, which we've been doing. And there's a few other things as well. I mean, look, one is Congress and leaders in this country need to put themselves in front of the problem, in between the problem, and be out protesting, leading, bringing public attention, pressuring Republicans, going to their districts, because obviously we don't have the majority in Congress to pass laws. And so that is what's really, really important, is that we're very vocal, that we're communicating everywhere that we can about what's actually happening to inform the public, because there is power in people and movements across this country. The second thing that's really important is we have filed over 100 lawsuits in the courts as members of Congress. We've won about half of those, reversing some of the most extreme, firings at some of these departments, reversing some of what Elon Musk is trying to do in the government. That has been very effective. And then we've also got to show up where these issues are happening, which is why it's so important that members of Congress from the House and Democrats are in El Salvador asking questions, talking to people on the ground, meeting with the family, going to the prison. And if they're not going to let us in, then we've got to cause a ruckus there and demand to the news media and the authorities that we ensure that in this case, that Abreu Garcia is safe, and that the prison is not holding other United States legal residents or others that have temporary status. Those folks need to be brought back to the U.S. and have their due process through the court system.
Yeah, I think that's something that's missed in the sense of, we heard from the Attorney General and others that if this particular individual showed back up in the United States, he would immediately just be deported. And that misses a critical detail, which is subject to deportation. If you get due process and a decision is made, is very different than you would immediately be deported. And I have said before, if there is due process, individuals who are undocumented and are here, of course, by the law of the land, are subject to deportation. But subject to at the end of a legal process is different than just being grabbed and sent somewhere else. This is a critical distinction.
Huge difference. Look, I'm an immigrant myself. I came to the U.S. when I was 4 years old. I gained and earned citizenship at 23, about 23. I've lived part of my life undocumented. I've been part of my life as a temporary resident, trying to earn my way to citizenship, a green card. And so I know how, those parts of what it's like to be not fully a part of this country. And there's always been a sense of concern, of worry, but never at the level that it is now. I mean, people now that have some type of legal temporary status are frightened and scared about what the Donald Trump administration is doing. Every single person, if you're undocumented or you have temporary legal status or a work permit or student visa and you're in this country and you commit some type of crime, then you need to be held accountable by the justice system, like everybody else in this country. And if in that process you are deported, that is how our system works, and you will be and should be deported in the United States because there was a judicial process that made that decision. no single president should have the ability to just pluck somebody, whoever that they want, and send them to a foreign prison without that due process.
One of the things that's a concern to some in my audience is that much of what we're seeing right now from the Democratic Party is, to use their word, performative. And I'll give you some examples. Cory Booker's 25-hour speech was a performance. It didn't get anybody health care. The Bernie AOC rallies, the town halls, these are interesting events, but they're not solving hunger. My view has been, given that right now the Democratic Party is mostly out of power at the federal level, and of course, governorships are different, but maybe some performance is okay to let people know about the issues that are going on, to try to build a movement that will grow into something effective into the midterm. So I acknowledge that a lot of these things are performances of sorts, but maybe that's kind of what's needed right now to reinvigorate the left. I don't know. What's your view on it?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that the Cory Booker, kind of filibuster speech, as well as the rallies, are very effective. And look, what Cory Booker did was he galvanized tens of millions of people across this country, many who got interested in politics for the first time through TikTok, through social media, being on the news. And he brought people in and told stories of what's actually happening to people. He made people understand the stakes. He encouraged people to talk to their members of Congress. People took action steps to reach out to their own constituents, their own communities, organize themselves. That was a huge, huge moment that he brought attention to a lot of issues. Take these AOC rallies with Bernie. They're incredibly, incredibly successful. They're organizing people. I mean, they're in places like, Idaho and Montana, red states and red districts, because they also know that if we've got to flip the House as that election's coming up here in a year and a half, 2 years, in order to actually stop Donald Trump's agenda. So they're already doing the organizing work on the ground and getting people to engage. So I find those actions to be very effective. It needs to be an all hands on deck and everything on the table approach. We've got to be in the courts, we've got to be at rallies, we've got to be at town halls, we've got to filibuster in the Senate and the House. Those are the actions that have got to be taken.
I want to just briefly ask you a little bit about tariffs, and then I'll let you go. Privately, your colleagues on the other side of the aisle in the House, are they wishing that Trump would just permanently say, we're not doing the tariffs, and so we could stop the chaos and move on to other things? Are they privately supportive? What are you don't have to out anyone in particular, but what are you kind of hearing from what Republicans really feel about this?
Yeah, I mean, look, some Republicans in private will certainly say that they don't support the tariffs, but quite frankly, that's very cowardly. If you're not going to publicly say and oppose the tariffs, then it doesn't really matter what you say in private.
Right.
This is a huge impact to the economy. It's going to raise prices, regardless of the fact that Donald Trump has, clawed back some of the most extreme tariffs. Many of them are still in place. We don't know what he's actually going to do. He's kind of chaotic about the issue. A lot of the supply chain has already been disrupted and will continue to be. And so I just think that Republicans in the House, especially, and the Senate are being cowardly. If they don't believe in the tariffs, they should be speaking out against them, speaking out against Donald Trump. They refuse to do so. So that's, I think, what's really the most upsetting with Republicans, is that their refusal to actually take any sort of accountability.
What's your best guess as to the future of this? Is it a quiet off-ramp with Trump saving face by saying everybody gave me what I wanted? Is it what do you anticipate?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. I think with Donald Trump, you never know what you're going to get. Just chaos and dysfunction. So I wouldn't be surprised if he, claws more back to try to take some credit, but the damage is already done. And I think Donald Trump has already proven that he doesn't care about the American worker or the American economy. He cares about enriching himself and his billionaire friends. That's what he's most interested in. And he partners with dictators like Vladimir Putin. And I think that's what's really, really dangerous, is the moment that we're in right now.
We've been speaking with Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia, representing California's 42nd congressional district. A lot of congressional districts in that state of California. Very, very big state. Congressman, really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.